I just don't think that the dungeons in Breath of the Wild held up to the dungeons of of Zelda games that I enjoy better.
Oh snap, who's calling me? Hello?
Hello, another friend of mine that I'm shoehorning into my new video because I like to include my friends. I have a question for you.
Hey, yeah, what can I, Ringo Ashburne, do for you, my friend, Macca?
Am I a VTuber?
No, you're more like a PNG tuber? You gotta have a model that, like, moves and stuff if you want to be a VTuber.
No, I think I'm a VTuber.
I really don't think you are, man.
Well, who asked you? I can be a VTuber if I want.
Alright. Move something. Move your arms. See, you can't even do that.
No, screw you! I can move my arms!
Persona 5, everybody. This time, it's June. Hope you're excited.
Picking up where we left off, we were making our way over to the brand new area added in Royal, Kichijoji. First impressions are pretty positive. There are a surprisingly sizable number of things to do, and I love the SMT1 remix. Also love seeing Makoto follow us around. I thought that was a really cute touch. Not a ton else to talk about, so let's get into this month's Confidant update. Starting things off, we have the winner of the second Patreon Confidant poll. Last time we had an unexpected winner in Torinosuke Yoshida, but will that trend continue? I certainly hope not, because the only one I'd be surprised by is Oya, and I really hope it's not Oya! This time we have Sadayo Kawakami, Chihaya Mifune, Ichiko Oya, and Hifumi Toga. The winner? Sadayo Kawakami, the teacher in a maid's outfit. Let's give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Following my trip to Kichijoji, I was able to hit rank 3 and 4 with Yoshida, rank 2 with the twins, rank 2 with Kasumi, and ranks 2 and 3 with Kawakami. I also established a confidant with Yusuke. Beyond this, I spent time down at Mementos doing some requests and getting about halfway through the new section we unlocked after last month. That's all for the pre-palace stuff. Let's get right into this month's story. As you likely remember, Makoto Nijima, the student council president, has been tasked with investigating the Phantom Thieves by Principal Eggman. Seeing as Kamoshida was targeting us specifically prior to his breakdown, she decided to focus on us. As time goes on, more and more students start to believe her to be nothing more than a tool for the school, or worse, entirely complicit in the original cover-up. While this is happening, Makoto slowly starts to realize the school isn't so much looking to figure out what happened, but more to punish the kids who did something about Kamoshida's abuse. Without telling them, Principal Eggman puts up signs telling students to report any information they have about students being in danger to the student council, his excuse being that it will help Makoto's investigation. When she hears about a student being extorted by the local Yakuza in Shibuya, Eggman responds initially by downplaying it, before ultimately forcing her to investigate it because he doesn't want to deal with it. Meanwhile, the gang starts to look for a new target by heading to the local TV station for their social studies field trip. Nothing much happens on the first day of the trip beyond... pancakes. Honestly, this scene is such an obvious dead giveaway for Akechi. I can understand someone not realizing he heard Morgana talk since they changed topics a few times before he joined in, but it's the kind of thing where you'll feel stupid for missing it. The next day, we watch an interview with Akechi, where he talks about the Phantom Thieves, leading to a debate over whether the group's actions are morally justified. During this, I made sure to make Joker sound like the biggest fart sniffer around. Afterwards, Joker makes friends with Akechi, and we establish a confidant with him. Unlike the original game, his confidant does not automatically complete itself as you play the main story, so I'll have to go out of my way to complete it, especially since it's required to access the third semester content. The last thing I'll say for now is I find it really funny how Sai accuses us of having a man on the inside, when Akechi quite literally does the exact opposite. I don't think he ever helps you in a way that isn't a setup. The next day, Yusuke comes to live with us, except for the fact that he doesn't. We did get a nice night of the gang hanging out and being friends though. We also follow up on what Yusuke plans to do with Sayuri, leaving it on display at LeBlanc, as well as giving a more detailed version of the incident that led to Joker coming to Tokyo.
Damn brat! I'll sue!
Oh my god, he said it! There's also a fantastic bathhouse scene, if only because it utterly avoids the easy fan service and tired unfunny tropes that typically accompany these kind of group trips in Persona. Now that stuff had to be saved for Strikers, cause you know, it's just so funny, am I right guys? A few days later, Makoto approaches with audio evidence of us being the Phantom Thieves. Before we can attempt to worm our way out of it, however, local genius Ryuji calls us and starts it by just confirming we're the Phantom Thieves. Makoto gives us an ultimatum. Prove the Phantom Thieves justice by putting a stop to the Yakuza extorting and threatening the students, or be reported to the principal. After doing some investigating, we learn how these criminals are trapping the students, as well as reconnect with Oya to learn the name of the ringleader, Junya Kaneshiro. This is then followed by a scene that I guess is better in Royal? In vanilla, it was a sadly standard, ha ha ha, the offensive gay stereotype harasses the straight boy and we're just gonna let him joke. But in Royal, it's been rewritten so that they think Ryuji is interested in giving drag a try, which I guess is an improvement? I don't know, this scene conceptually is bad, and I understand Atlus West was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. At least they tried to make it not as offensive this time. The next morning, we test Kaneshiro as being positive for owning a palace, and make our way into the metaverse. However, once we're there, we can't actually get inside his palace, seeing as it's a giant flying bank that sucks the money out of the pockets of the people below, seeing them as nothing more than walking ATMs. While we continue to look into the Yakuza, Makoto starts to come under more and more pressure from others. Eggman finally starts to care about what's happening to his students, resulting in him yelling at her to fix it so word never gets out. One of the students being extorted starts to beg her to solve things soon, mentioning how people accuse Makoto of helping not because she cares, but because she wants a letter of recommendation. But what finally breaks her is when Sai accuses her of not doing anything. Sai provides her with everything she needs. Yet instead of focusing on important stuff like getting into college, she keeps talking about imaginary thieves running around the city. To Sai, Makoto is just useless. A leech eating away at her life. A burden that's obsessed with a thing that simply isn't real. When An calls her useless for not helping with the investigation, Makoto runs off and makes the stupid decision to go straight to Kaneshiro. The gang chases after, only for Kaneshiro to take pictures of them with alcohol and cigarettes, blackmailing all of them into paying him 3 million yen. While at first this seems like a massive problem, it ends up being the key they needed to get inside the palace. Kaneshiro only allows those inside the bank he knows will be making a deposit, and Makoto just became a member. Once inside, the gang gets jumped by Kaneshiro's minions and they try to make a break for it. During this, Makoto awakens to her persona after Shadow Kaneshiro threatens her sister. After opening the way, the group retreats to the real world and Makoto pledges to join the Phantom Thieves and take down Kaneshiro for good. Now, before we get into the palace, it's time for this month's extra topic, the music of Persona 5. One of the things the Persona series is famous for is its varying musical styles across games, as well as just how catchy they are. Starting with Persona 3, every numbered Persona game has had its own unique musical identity meant to mirror the overall tone and theme of the game. For P3, that main style is rap and hip-hop, made to complement the moody, melancholic atmosphere of the game's narrative. In Persona 4, the overall tone of the game is much more happy-go-lucky and optimistic, leading to the game embracing J-pop and having a very high-spirited energy. The general mood of Persona 5 is one focusing on being slick and stylish, but with a very energetic pace. For this reason, the game's main musical genre is that of jazz, taking particular inspiration from the subgenre known as acid jazz. Acid jazz combines various genres such as funk, soul, and of course jazz, to create a smooth yet upbeat vibe. Probably the most famous example of this genre would be Jamiroquai, best known for songs like Virtual Insanity, Canned Heat, Cosmic Girl, as well as wearing a lot of funny hats. Arguably the most common song you'll be hearing throughout P5 is Beneath the Mask, which plays at night in Tokyo. Of all the music that plays while running around, this is easily my favorite, particularly the rainy day variant. I have strong memories of hearing this song on my first playthrough all those years ago, sitting in front of the window in my small living room in my college apartment, listening to the rain fall both in the game and a few feet behind me. It just puts me at ease and makes me feel calm and chilled out. Sure, the song is kinda overrated, but that doesn't mean I don't love it regardless.
I'm a shapeshifter at Post Masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, what else should I be? Please don't take off my mask, revealing dark.
Jumping inside the metaverse, songs like Price, The Whims of Fate, and Ark all fit perfectly with the feelings they're trying to convey with their corresponding palace. My absolute favorite palace theme, however, would be The Days When My Mother Was There. Not only does it have an appropriately Egyptian feel, but it also conveys the feelings of depression, trauma, grief, and desperation Futaba is going through. Of course, there's also the category of battle music, starting with the most iconic song in the entire game, Last Surprise. Seeing as it's the main battle theme, it's likely in competition with Beneath the Mask for the song you'll be hearing the most often. However, while Beneath the Mask is a great chilled out tune, Last Surprise feels like it was tailor-made to make battles, in particular all-out attacks, as satisfying as humanly possible. There are multiple points in the song where the instruments quickly swell, and being able to line it up with the action on screen leads to a burst of endorphins.
You never see it coming. You see that my mind is too fast for eyes. You're done there. By the time it hits you, you're not surprised.
While still present in Persona 5 Royal, the new battle theme Takeover takes precedent over Last Surprise, the latter being reserved for battles where you didn't ambush the shadow. Considering how easy it is to ambush enemies, you'll be hearing Takeover a lot more often. Takeover as a battle theme feels much more celebratory, fitting in with how Royal feels like a celebration of P5. But I feel like it lacks the natural coolness of Last Surprise, as well as being much more unbalanced. Almost the entire song is this big, bombastic jam. The chorus feels like it's playing all the time almost, with the verses and bridge in between feeling understated, short, and forgettable. It's also just really in your face, telling you that now is the time to get hyped, as opposed to letting you get hyped on your own. Honestly, this might be a good time to go into some of my negatives with the music. Unlike the OSTs for past entries, I never really tire of P5's soundtrack while I'm playing it. Emphasis on while I'm playing it. Sure, there are songs like the ones I've mentioned thus far that I find myself listening to outside of my play sessions, but there are just as many, if not more, that I find lacking, overbearing, or highly overrated. For instance, a lot of the boss battle or event battle themes feel generic and forgettable to me. Blooming Villain is mid as hell. However, my absolute favorite track in Persona 5, and potentially the entire Persona series, is Rivers in the Desert. Honest to God, top 10 boss battle themes, it's so freaking good. The build up to the chorus matched with the turn-based battles makes you feel like you're in the middle of a Mexican standoff, ready to pull out your personas and shoot the second the chorus drops. It's catchy, it's badass, it's cool, it's just a river in a dry land. Before ending off this segment, I want to talk about one last thing. Oftentimes, people credit Persona 5's lead composer, Shoji Meguro, for creating the game's iconic sound. But the truth is, he was just that, the lead composer. Sure, he composed the majority of the tracks, as well as directed the overall vision, but he wasn't the only person responsible for what we ended up with. Much like with every Atlus game, there's a whole team of people who worked on and made this OST what it is. In particular, these people are Shoji Meguro, Toshiki Konishi, Ryota Kozuka, Atsushi Kitajo, and Kenichi Tsuchiya. This isn't even mentioning those outside of Atlus who played an important role in the soundtrack's production, such as the game's vocalist Lin. Everyone who worked on this game's music deserves love, and I wish more credit was given to them. Kaneshiro's Palace. Man, I remember liking this dungeon a lot more than this. I don't know if it's because the beginning dungeon theme is so damn good, but I had some higher expectations going into it, and I ended up feeling pretty let down. Kaneshiro's Palace is broken up into two sections, the main bank and a giant safe. A lot of my disappointment really lies in the main bank, and it's mostly because of the constant use of security cameras. Walk into the view of a camera, increase the security level. You can check a camera's field of view by using your thief's eye. It's essentially the only hazard in the first half of the dungeon, but overall I found it more annoying than fun. Some cameras' field of view were so big and placed so specifically, it felt like I didn't have a ton of room to actually move around. Ironically, despite my annoyance with them, they're not exactly very punishing. It's ridiculously easy to lower your security level. It's a mechanic that feels less like a challenge to me and more of a thematic thing. The second half of the palace I found to be much better. Here, the main puzzle type is translating letters into numbers using various notes you find in piggy safes. I found this to be way more interesting and actually a little challenging towards the end. While you start off with direct translations, you eventually end up having to cross-reference multiple notes to figure out codes like L equal U plus G, D equal G. It felt like a Professor Layton puzzle. I think my biggest problem with the palace as a whole, however, is just how boring it is to look at. There's only one interesting room, and you're barely even in there. As for Kaneshiro's boss fight, it's actually kind of a challenge. In the original P5, you start off with just Kaneshiro by himself. Once you empty his health, he'll enter a second phase in which he jumps inside Piggytron, a giant piggy vault safe thing. Piggytron is a beast, and Kaneshiro can use it to do a ton of damage to the party with his move March of the Piggy. While you can tank it with enough health and guarding, you're not going to come out the other side with much left. This is why you can throw valuable items to distract Kaneshiro and avoid the attack altogether. Those stuff you sacrifice are genuinely useful items like somas, snuff souls, and bead chains, leading to a kind of mental debate over whether you're willing to give them up. In Royal, this fight has essentially been flipped around, with Kaneshiro starting off inside the Piggytron. Once he's outside of it, he'll call on a bodyguard and a hitman to protect him from your attacks and to attack you. By inflicting status ailments, namely sleep, you can effectively nullify the pair, leaving Kaneshiro open to attack without too much recourse. Eventually, he'll use the attack Make It Rain, which does a ton of damage at the cost of basically all of his money, meaning his guns for hire book it out of there, leaving the man completely vulnerable and easily beatable. Royal's version of the fight is in this middle ground between Kamoshida's and Madarame's. While the former was little more than an aesthetic change, and the latter was practically a complete reinvention of the concept, what we have here is more of a remix. A remix that is fine, it's cool. It freshens the fight up, it does its job, but it's not, it's not completely different. It's ultimately the same fight, it's just, it's made enjoyable in a new way. It's fine. As you might have noticed, Shadow Kaneshiro's boss form is very blatantly fly-themed, while the palace as the whole is the ultimate in gluttony, literally hoarding money for no reason other than to have it. This puts Kaneshiro right in line with Beelzebub, the lore of the flies that represents the sin of gluttony, pride, and idolatry. Shadow Kaneshiro is Baal, who, depending on where you look, is the same demon as Baal, who, depending on where you look, is the same demon as Beelzebub. The really difficult thing with demonology is that there's a lot of conflicting interpretations and misinformation out there that muddies the water a lot. Even when Atlus was first truly building out their roster of demons, they make use of some resources that are questionable at best. From what I can tell, Shadow Kaneshiro is supposed to be Beelzebub, but because there's debate over whether Baal, Baal, and Bubsy are the same demon or separate beings, they just kinda named him Baal. I'm not willing to do a ton of research into these demons, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Let's be glad we don't gotta go into how some sources say Beelzebub is also Satan, who is also Lucifer, and it just gives me further headaches. Following Shadow Kaneshiro's defeat, he tells us that someone else has been running around the metaverse, but we don't really have a lot of time to think about that before this place collapses. We head home, Kaneshiro turns himself in, as well as supposedly deletes the photos, and now we just gotta wait. Time for the post-Palace Confidant update! Compared to the pre-Palace stuff, I made a lot more progress this time around. I hit rank 3 with the twins, ranks 2 and 3 with Yusuke, ranks 5 and 6 with Yoshida, rank 4 with Maruki, ranks 2, 3, and 4 with Akechi, hit rank 6 with Ryuji, and hit rank 3 with Kasumi. I established a confidant with Makoto, as well as hit ranks 2 and 3 with her. Established a confidant with Hifumi after getting my charm to Suave. Established a confidant with Awai after finally getting my guts up to Dauntless. And established a confidant with Oya. Side note, Lala sounds like a knockoff Dr. Girlfriend.
Hey, I'm not gonna let you use this kid so you can take a vacation.
Yeah, antidote butterflies, the anti-flies. No, butterdotes, the butterdotes.
That's so awesome.
Sadly, I wasn't able to establish a confidant with Chihaya just yet, as I need 100,000 yen. So I'm gonna try and buy into her scam next month. Just as a reminder, starting the day this video goes live is the final Patreon confidant poll. This time, it's a loser's bracket, so everyone who didn't make it gets a second chance. There is also the inclusion of Shinya Oda, because he doesn't show up until over halfway through the game for some reason. If you want to vote for my final confidant, consider joining my Patreon. By pledging as little as $1, you can partake in the poll and help determine what I cover in this video series. Though if you decide to pledge more, you also get bonus content like 24-hour early access to new videos or your name in the credits. Link in the description below, the poll runs for 1 week. Also subscribe and hit the bell, please. Come July, we get confirmation that Kaneshiro truly did have a change of heart and that no student needs to worry about him and his gang ever again. Makoto then finally stands up to Eggman, stating that she refuses to be his perfect student anymore, ending her investigation into the Phantom Thieves as she now believes them to be just. I also established a confidant with Sai in the future present that now somehow applies to the past present, and how does that work? Makoto's character arc and the month of June are ultimately about one thing: justice. Akechi presents us with the first truly nuanced take on the Phantom Thieves. While the outcomes have certainly been for the better and the people they've targeted needed to be held accountable, the fact that they are vigilantes with methods that aren't known is concerning at best and wildly illegal at worst. There's certainly an argument to be made that stealing a person's heart and causing a change in cognition could be akin to brainwashing, so it's a question worth asking. While Joker and company remain steadfast in their convictions, the game uses Makoto to further explore the concept. Up to this point, Makoto has done the bidding of Principal Kobayakawa faithfully, even in situations where she knows he's just using her, all because she believes that ultimately the system is just. However, the longer Makoto follows his orders, the more she starts to see the cracks. First, her fellow students, the people she's meant to represent, start to resent her. They believe her to not only have been aware of Kamoshida's actions, but that she was knowingly complicit in the cover-up. She doesn't care about them, all she cares about is what she stands to gain. In reality, this is far from the truth. Much like her father, the police officer, and sister, the public prosecutor, she wants to represent and defend these people. However, it becomes clearer and clearer to her that those above her have zero interest in doing so, instead choosing to play internal politics in an attempt to benefit themselves and the school as an institution. She starts to lose faith not only in the system and her role in it, but the concept of justice as a whole. During all of this, she starts to crack under the pressure being placed on her. Kobayakawa's corrupt demands, the ire of her fellow students, as well as her own hopes and desires falling apart at the seams. The final straw comes in her own sister yelling at her, calling her useless and a burden, that her desire for justice is nothing more than a child's delusion. Lost, she turns to the Phantom Thieves for an answer. She doesn't just task them with proving to her their actions are just. She's desperately hoping they can prove to her that justice is still obtainable in the world she finds herself in. Now, this stuff is what I love about June. Not only does it intertwine Makoto's character arc with solid social commentary that's pretty blatantly about the police, but it makes for what is, in my opinion, the strongest character origin thus far. It's just a shame that it comes at the cost of what I don't love about June. Kaneshiro is not a character. He is a tool of the plot. He's an obstacle for the Phantom Thieves to overcome. Nothing more. Unlike Madarame and Kamoshida, characters that drove the plot by their heinous actions and whom are explored thoroughly, Kaneshiro is just there to create stakes. Our first two villains feel like actual characters beyond the purpose they fulfill in the plot, yet Kaneshiro is nothing but that. There's nothing to him but money and greed and gluttony, and as a result, his palace lacks any good symbolism that goes beyond the surface. People are ATMs because he sees them as things he can take money from. He sees himself as above others, so his bank flies above Shibuya. There's a whole room that's one big tumbler lock safe, because banks! There is nothing else to learn about his character. He has no history, he has no relationships, he doesn't even have an interesting treasure. He appears in a total of 2 scenes in the entire game. His shadow appears more than him, and once you beat that thing, he disappears from the plot entirely, never to be seen again. If this was any other Persona game, I'd probably be a lot more lenient on him. But the problem is, P5 puts its palace owners at the center of everything. They are representative of the problem being commentated on. The game tries to make him representative of something by theming him around the sin of gluttony, but it feels like they struggle to come up with a way to do it. As it stands, he's more indicative of greed than gluttony. You know who probably would have been a better fit for the villain of an arc themed around Makoto, the obtainability of justice, and even the sin of gluttony? Principal Kobayakawa. All you need to do is focus more on why he's so adverse to properly helping the students. He cares more about the school being in top standing, because the better the school's image, the better he looks and the more things he gets out of it. You'd have to add more to his character, as well as rework some stuff later in the game, but I think it would work a lot better than what we ended up with. Kaneshiro does not matter beyond being a tool to enable Makoto's evolution as a character. And while her story is interesting and well done, what it leaves us with is a dungeon themed around a nothing character. Nothing but a fly on dirty money. I'm definitely coming off a lot more upset about this than I'm really intending. I'm more so annoyed at the missed opportunity. Kaneshiro feels like an afterthought in a game where every palace ruler is central to the story they're trying to tell. In a game about the flaws of society due to people with power abusing it, I really feel like Kobayakawa would better suit the story they're trying to tell with Makoto. Sure, the Yakuza do fit in that category, but that angle feels severely underutilized. The English localization refuses to call Kaneshiro anything other than mafia or criminal, but unless something got lost in translation, it just comes off as a label taped onto him so that he counts. May might have been disappointing in comparison to April, but June just feels like a mixed bag. It's got some solid highs, but frustrating lows. However, the good news is I vividly recall things only going up from here when it comes to P5's villains. I'll see you guys in the summer with the closest Persona 5 gets to being Persona 4.